Hi there, this is Datila, and welcome to the Body Slam TNA Impact review. And I'm joined by Burt Macklin.
How's it going?
All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about the show. But before we get into tonight's show, let's recap Hard to Kill a little bit. So I was at Hard to Kill. You unfortunately weren't able to be there.
Sadly, I wasn't. From what I watched it on TV and it looked great, and I can imagine I was there for the tapings. I can imagine how great it sounded in person during Hard to Kill because it sounded great during the taping. So yeah, I couldn't be there.
Hard to Kill was fantastic. I was actually sitting second row behind Hardcam, so I saw myself a couple of times during this show. So I thought it was awesome. A lot of fun. Yeah. So was there any match that stood out to you in particular that you watched, or any favorite match that you had?
Well, I think that now going forward, the system, Moose, Eddie Edwards, Brian Myers, and Alicia, they got 2 wins on the show, Moose being now the world champion. So I think they are the lead faction of Impact. Of TNA, excuse me, you could say. And going forward, I think that, they're like they're the top, maybe not the top draw, but, they're the number ones. People are going to be coming after them. So, and then like I said, world champion, they got a tag victory. And Alicia looked very, very, very good in that Ultimate X match. I thought she was one of the stars. So, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if the system eventually captures all the gold here. And they just run TNA Impact.
Yeah. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Neither would I. Hard to Kill was a really great show. The Ultimate X match was amazing. The main event was amazing. Every match was amazing. I couldn't pick a favorite if I
thought the Knockouts Ultimate X match or the Triple Threat were probably my favorites. Just because Vicino is so amazing, and Chris Sabin is a legend. And I don't think I've ever seen a bad Chris Sabin match. So, and then the Ultimate X match, I thought there were so many people, if not everybody, who didn't stand out to me as somebody who could either be a future world champion or a Knockouts tag champion in some aspect. I would say my MVP of the match was probably Dani Luna. I thought she really looked like a star, and I could see her being champion soon.
It's interesting that you bring up El Hijo de Vikingo and Kushida, especially in that Triple Threat match. I actually met both of them at the post meet and greets. They were really cool.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into tonight's show. Let's kick things off. Talk about this main event. It was Josh Alexander versus Will Ospreay 2. As we know, Will Ospreay defeated Josh Alexander the first time around. And I was really looking forward to this match. I mean, seeing this match live was freaking incredible. I mean, the atmosphere was freaking insane. If I had to choose a couple spots in this match, I'd say when Josh Alexander did the Styles Clash to Will Ospreay on the TNA logo, that was epic. Or Will Ospreay doing the Tiger Driver to Josh through the table. I got that on tape, by the way.
I honestly think this match was better than their first one. I don't know if it was a combination of just because TNA being back, the crowd was incredible. But yeah, no, I thought this match, you could say it over-delivered. I thought, because again, and you heard from Scott's speech at the end of the show, I think everybody would agree with him. Those are 2 of the best wrestlers in the world. So only magic can happen when you put 2 of the best wrestlers in the world in the ring. So.
Are you just saying that because we saw this live? Is that why you say you like this match better than their first?
No, I just think just because the crowd was really they were loud. And then I just think that the TNA crowd is just very passionate. So, I think that they really added to the match.
I do agree. Like I said, the atmosphere was insane surrounding this match. I mean, just the whole entire arena was lit. Yes, you could say. Now, you mentioned Scott D'Amore. Scott D'Amore does come out at the end. He basically praises Josh Alexander and Will Ospreay. He says that it was because of them you know, and will also be a TNA kid, that TNA never died. He also says that TNA is back and is never going away. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, they've been around for 20, what is it, 22 years now? And yeah, I think that TNA's always been that alternative. You know, they took off when, you know, WCW ended, so they've always had a very like I'm trying to think of the best word. The people who love TNA stick with TNA, and you know they're gonna ride for TNA. So when they announced that they were coming back, I think that, you know, I don't think anybody left, but I think that really, I think it could have brought some new fans just because they might have heard about the things TNA did in the past, you know what I mean, and a lot of the past names that were there, and they you know, when they hear that name again, it makes them want to check it out.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I cannot wait. Like tonight was just an example of what TNA is going to bring to the table, and I can't wait. I'm really excited for this year. So we also got Nick Netman talking about his TNA debut. And he was basically talking about how he's been fortunate to rack up accomplishments in 19 years, but he did it under one world. And he wants to come face to face. He basically made it be known that he's after that TNA world title, but because he respects the men and the women in the locker room, he doesn't want to jump the line. And he's interrupted by Steve Macklin. Now, Steve Macklin says that people are always going to just ask what in the hell happened to Dolph Ziggler. I feel like Steve Macklin is such an interesting choice to give Nick Netman his first feud in TNA. Now, I don't want to jump too much ahead because that'll spoil what's going to happen. Well, next week. So I'm liking where this is going, especially because Steve Macklin is the former Impact World Champion. So the fact that Nick Nemeth is going after the TNA World title and his first feud is against a former World Champion, I think that's a great choice. What about you?
I do as well, and just because of the fact that Moose is the current champion, Macklin and Moose had an alliance at one point. Like you said, Macklin is a former world champion. And yeah, and I do think I also like what you said about this is a good person for him to be his first match, because Macklin's not like you said, he's not the top guy, but he was the top guy, and he's, you know, in the top range of talent. I mean, of people there in like the world title scene. So yeah, and like Dolph working his way up, you know, it's not technically from the bottom, but yeah, I like this.
I wonder if he'll beat former world champions as he gets to Moose. You know, will we see Nick Netman possibly versus Josh Alexander, the longest reigning Impact World Champion? Will we see Nick Netman versus Alex Shelley, the former, you know, world champion?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways they could go, but definitely like this one for me, I don't know. It's not like I even gave it much thought, but right when Steve Macklin came out, I was like, okay, I like where this is going.
Me too. And people were just booing Steve Macklin. I felt so bad for him, but I didn't boo him because I like Steve Macklin.
Well, you know, them booing him, I think he's doing his job. So
no, yeah, you do have a point, but that's just me being like, I like Steve Macklin. Why are y'all booing?
yeah.
But you know, yeah, he's just doing his job. So all right, tonight's show kicked off with the six-way exhibition scramble match. It was Kushida versus Speedball Mike Bailey versus Jake Something versus Laredo Kid versus El Hijo de Vankingo versus Trey Miguel. I actually really enjoyed this match. I think this was a great showcase of the X Division. I think every guy had a great showing in this. Jake Something has been incredible since he returned. So he did win this match, which leads me to believe that he might win the X Division title later this year. I think big things are in store for Jake Something in 2024.
Yeah, just because even earlier when they brought him back, he's been on a tear, and they've really been positioning him as somebody that they want to push to the top. So, and that's the thing about the cool thing about TNA is I think the X Division belt is just as much as important as the world title. So
I wonder if we will see Jake something be the one to take the title off Chris Sabin, or if Chris Sabin will lose the title before Jake something becomes X Division champion.
Well, it's funny. In going into Chris Sabin, I did see a potential heel turn from the way that interview went down when Alex Shelley said what goes around comes around, and he pats him on the back. I don't know why Alex Shelley would turn on him, but if we see a potential machine gun feud, now you want to talk about something that you didn't like people booing Steve Maclin. I don't want to see the machine guns feud, but it would be interesting, and it would be an instant classic: Chris Sabin versus Alex Shelley. So I don't know if Chris Sabin, I'm not. Jake something is going to be. I would say Jake something is a future X Division champion, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to take it off Chris Sabin.
It's interesting that you bring up a potential feud, because I thought that when Chris Sabin won the X Division title, they were going to do Machine Gun versus Machine Gun. I thought he was going to invoke Option C and challenge Alex Shelley for that world title. I'm kind of disappointed that didn't happen.
That would have been awesome, but I think at the time, I don't think that at that point it wouldn't have been right to break them up, just because they were so hot at the time. You know what I mean? The Machine Guns were like I think they were more over than they've ever been. So I think now is more appropriate if they're going to do something like that.
True, but I mean, they don't need the world title to feud. So
no, yeah, exactly. Because I didn't mean to interrupt you. Because if I'm like long-term booking, this could be Alex Shelley's way back to a world title match. He beats Chris Sabin, holds the X Division title to when he can cash in Option C again and wins it again.
Yeah, I could see that happening. All right, so next we get a Will Ospreay interview, and he's basically just talking about how he's a world beater and how the three letters behind GIA, which were TNA, were the reason why he became a professional wrestler. And he basically is asking, can Josh Alexander handle that pressure, which we find out later in the night that he is able to. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no. Will Ospreay is always great on the mic, and I just love how every time he just talks up TNA. I just love that he grew up loving TNA. So
yes. Same. He's really great on the mic, and this was a great interview. All right, so next we get a quick Giselle Shaw segment. And basically, Gail Kim interrupts her and tells her that she won without the Shatraj. And she basically is reminding her that the Shatraj is holding her back and she doesn't need them, which is interesting if you ask me. So we could potentially see a split of the Shatraj. I mean, before the Shatraj, Giselle Shaw was great on her own too. But what do you think? You think the Shatraj adds to Giselle Shaw or no?
I think she's great enough to stand on her own, but I was thinking more in terms of if she's trying to tell, if Gail Kim's saying she doesn't need the Shantaraj, basically if we're going to see a Giselle Shaw face turn, which I would rather see her as a heel. That's why I like the Shantaraj. I think it adds to her presence. But I'm fine either way. Like I said, I don't think she needs them. She's a star in her own right. So I could go either way.
I cannot picture Giselle Shaw as a babyface.
Yeah, that's what I was having a little hard time with. I don't think that she can't do it. I just can't picture it.
I mean, for all we know, she could be the most awesome babyface on the entire roster. We don't know. I'm not saying that she can't be a babyface. It's just I can't picture her as a babyface. She's been a heel this entire time, Mm-hmm. And like you said, she doesn't need the Shatraj. It just adds to her. She's always saying about how the spotlight was, and will always belong to the quintessential diva. So, if anything, maybe if they do split her from the Shatraj, it could possibly be maybe she thinks they're taking the spotlight away from her.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
So we get Tasha Steelz versus Xia Brookside. This was an incredible debut by Xia Brookside, getting a big victory over a former Knockouts champion, Tasha Steelz. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what a debut! Just because, I said that everyone in the Ultimate X match was really good, and Xia was one of them. And yeah, I did not see this happening just because Tasha Steelz is a former champion. I didn't, and then, but this I think just projects her as someone to definitely keep an eye out for, just because she just beat a former world champion and a former Knockouts tag team champion. So Tasha Steelz is no joke.
I do agree. Tasha Steelz is not a joke. Like you said, former Knockouts champion, former Knockouts tag team champion. So, for Xia Brookside to defeat Tasha Steelz on her debut, it's a pretty big deal.
Definitely.
And based on what TNA announced that this match is happening again, it doesn't surprise me. I'm sure Tasha Steelz is going to want her win back.
Mm-hmm.
We get a Joe Henry segment. And, he's basically trying to get revenge over the fact that, he was attacked by AJ Francis and DJ Woo Kid. As you saw, he threw out the laptop with the rest of the trash and just see DJ Woo Kid in there. I honestly think this is going to set up Joe Henry versus AJ Francis possibly at No Surrender. What do you think?
Yeah, but I also, maybe if we could get a couple of them cutting diss tracks on each other, you know what I'm saying? Let's build it up a little bit more. They both have shown that they have musical talent. So why don't we get a couple more videos?
Oh, that's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to see what kind of videos Joe Henry would come up with. All right. So we get the Grizzled Young Vets versus Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian. And this was a really great match. I have to say, the Grizzled Young Vets are obviously after those TNA tag team titles. At Hard to Kill, they sent a message to ABC, and they sent a message to ABC again here tonight. Things aren't looking so good for Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian. They lost this match, and they lost at Hard to Kill against the System. Now, the Grizzled Young Vets did a really good job at isolating Frankie Kazarian, so it was no surprise when they got the victory here. Frankie Kazarian attacking Eric Young at the end of this match. He turned heel, and he hit him with the Fade to Black. You know something? Honestly, when I saw this live, I was really surprised. I was like, what? Because I was not expecting this. So this was a great shock. But when you think about it, it makes sense. When you go back and you think about it, when Frankie Kazarian returned to TNA, he said he wanted to be world champion. He already lost 2 matches back-to-back in TNA. He is not starting out 2024 right. So he's probably just wants to just focus on his goal, which is to become TNA world champion. And obviously teaming with Eric Young is not going to get him there because, look, they lost 2 matches. So what are your thoughts on this match and on Frankie Kazarian turning heel?
Yeah, I think it was needed for him, just because I'm not going to say he was stale as a babyface. I just think that there were too many other babyfaces who were ahead of him in terms of, how people view him, or even, just like where they are, like ranking wise. So I think a heel turn, and then, like you said, like he is not starting 2024 out right, but now like it seems like he's pissed off about it. So I think it's going to get people interested.
They were chanting, "Fuck you, Frankie." People are interested.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I was surprised. I was really surprised. We get a segment with the System, and they're basically having lunch somewhere in Vegas. They're celebrating Moose's victory, and basically they said that they prove the system works, and no one, not even Nick Nemeth, will stop them, and that it's a new beginning for them. And Moose no longer wants to be known as a wrestling god. He wants to be known as world champion. Now, this is interesting because, Moose does have a habit of backstabbing his friends and his alliances. Now, so far, he hasn't turned his back on Brian Myers, but he did say it was a new beginning, so maybe he won't turn his back on the system here, but I could potentially see the system gaining all the belts, like we talked about earlier. I could see Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards becoming tag team champions. If you add the exhibition title in there. So, what are your thoughts on this segment?
I don't want to compare. I don't like usually comparing one company to the other, but this reminded me of, especially also just because the first episode of the TNA rebrand, this reminded me of I think it was the first episode of AEW Dynamite, where the Inner Circle cut that promo basically announcing themselves, and they were going forward, they were the top faction. This is what that reminded me of. The System are definitely, they've announced themselves, especially just this promo, like a mafia style promo. They're sitting at dinner, you know what I mean? And like you said, Moose is the world champion. Brian Myers and Brian Myers, yeah, big victory, and they could basically thank themselves for causing Frankie Kazarian to turn on Eric Young. So I do think that, and like I said, Alicia Edwards, one of the stars of the Ultimate X match. So yeah, I think that this is the top group in TNA right now.
I do agree with you. They are the top group, and it would only be a matter of time before, like we said, they win all the gold.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Moose turns on them before they win all the gold. So we get a Jordan Grace interview, and basically this is to set up the rematch with her and Trinity. Now, I don't want to get too much into it, but because, this match is going to happen next week. So, but I it's no surprise. Trinity's going to get her rematch here, as she is a former champion, so.
And one of the most dominant champions in recent memory. She had a great reign. So yeah, I'm a little surprised it's happening this soon, but of course she was going to get a rematch. So
now that you bring it up, I am surprised that they didn't say this for No Surrender. I feel like this should have been this. Obviously, she was going to get her rematch, but I'm really surprised it's happening as quick as you said. She did have an incredible reign. I mean, she tapped out Deonna Purrazzo. Not everybody could say that. She tapped out Deonna Purrazzo. Not once. Not twice. But 3 times.
Yeah. And Deonna's one of the best in the world, so she beat one of the best in the world 3 times.
Yeah. So that should say something. All right. Lastly, we get a Jay Vidal segment, who is from Las Vegas, and it's so funny because he goes out there and you think he's gonna be a baby face. We're in his hometown, but he immediately turns heel again, and he's basically saying that we remind him why he left, to quote, this disgusting city in the first place, and people boo him. And he basically talks about how there's not a single person in the building that can beat him up, and PCO comes out and beats him up. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I didn't think he deserved that. You know what I mean?
He trashed his hometown.
Well, again, it's PCO. He went out there and destroyed him.
That's true. He did go out there and destroy Jay Vidal, but nevertheless, you can't say he didn't deserve it. This is his hometown. He turned his back on his hometown.
But it's not like PCO's from there. What did he have to gain from that?
PCO is so over no matter what he does.
It's true.
So, overall, what were your thoughts on tonight's show?
I thought it just is continuing the momentum of Hard to Kill. And like Scott said, you can't kill this company. And I mean, TNA will never die. So I thought this episode was incredible.
I thought this episode was a Sean Spears perfect 10 out of 10. And as Eric Young said at the start of Hard to Kill, stop sleeping on TNA Wrestling. By God damn it, if you're still sleeping on TNA Wrestling after tonight's episode, I don't know what to tell you. But stop sleeping on TNA Wrestling.
Exactly. Well said.
Thank you. All right. So thank you guys all so much for watching. We'll be here next week, and we hope you guys leave us a like. Burt, where can people find you?
on X. It's weird to say that. At Burt Macklin 86. Burt Macklin 11. Sorry.
And you can find me on X at Datila_. I live tweet about Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, and Rampage. Oh, and also TNA Impact. And with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell so you get notified whenever Body Slam drops a new video and whenever this video is released. And we'll see you guys next week.